Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Well, the first city, third largest city in the Ukraine has fallen. The first step of this is happening, and it is getting uglier and uglier. And the things that we have talked about are starting to happen. The things that we have brought our buddy Mike Lyons on, who's going to join us later on in the show. The military analyst has talked about the way that this thing's going to break us down has happened. The deaths are ratcheting up, and I mean, if you see what they're doing, and you see the veracity of it, you see the fact that it's now indiscriminate. And the fighting yesterday for Kherson was brutal, but their mayor has admitted today that they're no longer in control of the city. The Russians have the city.
Psychologically, it's significant, but Putin didn't enter the Ukraine to go to Kherson. He's not going to stop until he gets the capital. He's not going to stop until he can capture as much ground and as quickly as he can.
Yeah, and that's what he wants. He wants to send a message. It's very interesting. Igor Novakov, who is a former advisor to Zelensky, was on MSNBC talking about what it is that Putin's doing, right? You know, it was the Nazis. It was they were trying to get a nuclear weapon. That was the new one yesterday. That's why he went in there. You know, it's a genocide against Ukrainian Russians, you know, in the Donbass region. It's all of these things, you know, that he throws out there because it doesn't matter. His whole thing is, I'm going to throw something against the wall and see what sticks, and whatever the most people believe, we'll just run with that. Nobody believes anything. But his fear, and that's what it is. It's a terror. Putin is terrified because they were becoming something he couldn't control. They were becoming something that he feared the most. It's what he's terrified that's going on in his country. With his people starting to rumble and turn against him, getting angry, they were becoming far more West than they were Russian. They were becoming far more first world, Starbucks, iPhone, Netflix, chill, than the great glory of the motherland, Russia.
And foremost, I have no doubt of what's going on. People think it's some sort of a way to kind of build back the USSR or something like that. But no, for President Putin, undoubtedly, this is a war of genocide against the Ukrainian people, the people who are the thorn in his side, the people who kind of are living proof to the Russian people and to the people around the world that, you know, there's liberty, there's freedom, and there's human rights beyond the Kremlin walls.
Yes. There's democracy. There's all of those things. Well, isn't Russia a democracy? No, they're not a democracy. He's an autocrat. He dominates everything. He controls everything. They are a little bit more free than China. But the reality is he rules that country with an iron fist. He rules that country, and he rules it out of fear of what people may find out. He rules it out of fear of, hey, there's a better way. There is. And the Ukraine was corrupt. It was extremely corrupt. When Zelensky came in, you know, let's go back. YouTube star, Dancing with the Stars. I mean, you know, winner. He's the voice of Paddington Bear in the Ukraine version of the Paddington Bear movies. He's a comedian. And he came in and he was trying to get them on a non-corrupt footing. The reality is, when they voted in 91 to walk away from Russia and the Soviets, it started and it planted a seed. The corruption held up a lot of that stuff, but the light was shining. And having that next door, right? Having that next door, that drove them crazy. Oh my God, they're free. Oh wow, they're able to do what they want to do. He didn't want that. He wanted people, but it's too late. Freedoms have already seeped in. I've always said this about China. China's biggest issue is going to come when eventually, and hopefully sooner rather than later, our businesses get their heads out their ass and their finances start to struggle. Because if you're worried about a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home and your rent and all of the other things, well, the fact that you're doing pretty well and you're not having, you can't maybe watch, you can't go on Twitter, or you can't watch some of these things that, you've heard about, you really don't care, right? The move that they make that you don't agree with, they'll shut you down so you keep your mouth shut because that's the way they do it. But when you start to take away that freedom and then you take away the financial freedom, that's when hell breaks loose. That's when hell breaks loose. So not only am I broke, I can't speak up. He looked over there. They're kind of broke, but they could speak up. They're trying to grow, and they're stumbling. They're bumbling and stumbling because they're new at this. They're a democracy that's 30 years old. That's been full of old guards and corruption throughout. It's not just at the top level, throughout. I mean, everything there was corrupt. You go to what we would call the DMV, corrupt. He wants to make sure he doesn't allow that seed to be planted for anybody else to get the ideas, especially any Russian people, that we should be able to choose the candidates we want. We should be able to watch the things we want. We should be able to have news that's objective across. We should be able to have all of those things. He doesn't want that because the people informed is the people that don't put up with crap.
Obviously, indiscriminate bombardment of civilians. In that area that was shelled today, there's nothing of military importance in the vicinity. We're seeing pictures of, explosions and tanks and, destroyed residential buildings, but there are maternity wards that are being attacked. Babies are being born on the subway. There are people with diabetes with no access to insulin. The situation is horrible, and it's deliberately horrible.
Yeah, he's proving a point. Along with everything else. He's proving a point. This is his game. I'm going to prove the point. Here's the point. Don't get any ideas, people. Don't get any ideas. What's hurting the Russians right now is that if you're in North Korea and they get into some sort of war, what kind of sanctions are we putting on them? They've had no freedom. They don't even know. I mean, my God, they think he told everybody he invented the burrito. The burrito. If you're in Russia and you're used to going to the Apple store and you're used to watching your Netflix world and you're used to being able to move about freely and you're used to be able to go to your Starbucks and all of these things, and all of a sudden things are shutting down. Stuff's getting so expensive you can't even afford it anymore. You're starting to plant stuff in your garden because that's how you're going to eat. And you're used to a certain amount of comfort. That pisses people off. And the goal is, along with the oligarchs, is to basically starve them out so they make some sort of a change. But Putin is coming for these people because he hates what they believe and what they want. And it is going to get ugly. And it's going to get uglier and uglier. And that's sad. Zelensky spoke today. Short speech. Every day there's a victory. Every day there's he wakes up and he does his thing and he can speak to the people. That is a win. And the question is, how long does he hold out for?
In a morning message to the unbreakable people of invincible Ukraine, President Zelensky said the nation broke Russia's plans in a week, and he spoke directly to any Russian soldiers listening. Go home, he said. Tell your commanders that you want to live, not to die. Zelensky's defiance came as Russian troops gained ground in parts of the south and threatened to sever Ukraine's access to the Black Sea.
Yeah, and that's the big thing that's going to start happening. Once they get through certain areas, they're going to be able to separate the forces, break them in half, and then they're going to surround it in a much easier way and choke them off. And then even getting stuff to them is going to be hard. But remember, winning the quote-unquote war or battle isn't occupying. Occupying something wholly different. But if you see what he's doing, see what he did in Chechnya, go look at Chechen. You go look at Chechnya. He did not care. His whole thought process was, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to blow you up. I'm going to destroy everything about you. I don't care about the building that's 1,600 years old. I don't care about all of these things. I'm going to obliterate. I'm going to turn it to rubble. And these are just numbers. These civilians that die. On the other side of things, close at home, we're going to have to start figuring out what the pinch is going to feel like at the pump. Last night, gas jumped 12 cents where I was. It's getting ugly, and today, oil's up and away.
Global markets rebounded, but oil prices, they continue to soar, and that's as new sanctions targeting oil and gas-related equipment were imposed. Some Republicans, though, want the Biden administration to go even further and cut off oil and gas imports from Russia entirely.
Yeah, which we haven't done yet, but the whole thing is you're walking a fine line, right? Because you're in the midst of a election season. You already have crippling inflation. You've had supply chain issues. Doing this, you're trying to, what can we do to go hard as we can and at the same time offer some relief elsewhere? Because you are still accountable to your people. That's a tough one. You know, I talked about that article yesterday. What's one of the things that we can do to help the Ukrainians is stop bitching about an extra 50 cents in gas. And that's understandable, meaning go ahead. You know what? We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And there is something to that that's very real. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Tweet at us, text the program. A lot of stuff to get to today. First major carrier, not here in the U.S., unfortunately, that says, you know, we're done with the mask. Talk about that. And Sam Elliott. It's in a bit of hot water. I don't think he really cares. We're talking about what he said because it is kind of funny. It is. And masculinity's been redefined, according to several publications, about Zelensky. And it's hilarious. It is. MyPillow right now has great deals, deep discounts on everything. Go to mypillow.com/Benson. When you go there, you can use code Benson, and you're going to save deep discounts on everything, up to 20 products at their lowest prices ever. You can take advantage of it right now. Big discounts. 6-day money-back guarantee on almost every single thing made in the USA. The Giza Dream Sheets, the MyPillow, the My Slippers, the mattress toppers, you name it, they've got it. Comforters, it is awesome. But you got to take advantage of it right now. Big time. And when you do, Mike Lindell's going to throw in his book about him going from essentially drugs and addiction and the lowest point ever in his life to being the CEO of MyPillow. You get that absolutely free with any purchase. MyPillow.com, promo code Benson. So you go to MyPillow.com/Benson. And when you're there, use promo code Benson and you'll save huge on all of these things. MyPillow.com/Benson. Use promo code Benson. Chad Benson Show.
Irreverent? Yeah. So what? It's the Chad Benson Show.
Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened.
Travel search site Skyscanner reports that summer travel bookings have soared over the past month, with the top 3 destinations being Orlando, New York, and London topping the list. Industry watchers say the easing of COVID requirements for entry into and exit from many countries is one factor. Another is cost. The same travel site finds that the average summer airfare for 2022 is 53% lower than in 2019.
Yeah. You know, and I think with rising fuel prices, if you haven't bought your ticket now, let me tell you something. You better hurry. Planning on going somewhere. Europe may not be it. Take some iodine with you. What's that mean? Google it. Phil, you flew. You didn't. How long were you in the mask?
I always had a drink in my hand.
There you go. Smart. By the way, around here at work, we don't have to wear the mask anymore, but up until Monday, we had to. And I was always walking around with a drink in my hand, too. So just, food, drink, whatever it was. That's how you get around that. It is interesting because the masking thing for me, I don't want to go anywhere if I have to wear a mask for 12 hours. My on-air partner of my local show, he flew back from Greece like September of last year or whatever. And he and his wife on the flight home. It was almost 24 hours of, and he's a bit of a hypochondriac, especially when it came to this. He's over hypochondriac, and he's got an N95, and even like it was brutal. He's like, at the end, I just want to tear it off. I could not do that because it's not just the flights, right? It's the going to the airport, getting into the airport, while you're at the airport, while you're on the plane. If your plane's delayed and you're sitting there, I mean, you just go on and on. So, and you're wondering, people are wondering, what's the first one that's going to do it? Well, the third largest British carrier behind EasyJet and British Airways, Jet2, has said, we're going to scrap the mask. We're done. Now, and that's obviously in the UK. So if you're flying in certain places, but and they say when you're in the airport, you got to follow their rules. When you're in their country, whatever it is, you got to follow the rules. But they're done as of now. They just said we're not doing it, and because the UK has gone and scrapped all of theirs, and it's understandable. I'm still waiting for that. Again, these rules that we have are bizarre and arbitrary. It's not just here, but globally. I went back the other day. Kyrie Irving can now watch his team play. He's unvaccinated, and he's an odd bird. He thinks the earth's flat and stuff. He's unvaccinated, and he can now see his team play, the Brooklyn Nets. So he can watch them play. He can sit on the bench, but he himself cannot play because he's unvaccinated. Here's the weird thing. Other teams' players who are unvaccinated can play. It is arbitrary and stupid. And I think that's the frustrating thing about so much of this stuff. It is 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. More on Ukraine, the third largest city, an important city, but not the city that Putin wants to destroy, has fallen. And this is the first of what will be the domino effect. Talk about that. Sam Elliott's in hot water over some comments he made on Mark Maron's podcast. A lot of stuff to get to. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
The first biggest city to fall, I guess the third largest city, has fallen now. And it is, it's what everybody kind of expected. You could sit here and we could talk about how plucky they are, how much they're going to fight, how they, and they're not going to give up. As long as they've got a bullet and a breath, they're going to go down swinging. And it's one of those things where against insurmountable odds, and let's be real, that's what we're dealing with here at this point in time. Insurmountable, bombing indiscriminately at this point. Just firing willy-nilly. Just point it over there and shoot. But they're going to take as many people with them as possible. At this, you go back in the day and great leaders, essentially you burn the boats, right? You go ashore somewhere and you burn the boats. Why did you do that? Well, now there's no turning back. There is no running to the boat. Our stand is going to be here. And either we survive or it ends here. And that's the way that they're taking this. It is. It's going to be interesting because they're going to take as many as possible. Now, how many is that? Nobody really knows. Remember, disinformation is, information, truth, first casualty in war. We know that. Disinformation is going to be very, very important in this game. And you've got the nerd world and hackers. The one thing about the I will say this, and I think a lot of people are surprised, the Ukrainians have done a fairly decent job of battling off a lot of the cybercrime that's going on out there.
That positioning of Russia as a common enemy does make the volume of getting information out of Ukraine to understand what's happening on the ground even more difficult, especially when you have other kinds of clout chasers and financial, people using old war footage for financial gain, just for the clicks, right? Just for the engagement.
Yeah. And some people are doing that. But you've got to realize that this misinformation is going to be vital, because inside of these things, you're looking for the truth, right? And that's what we're all trying to pick. And let me tell you something. It's going to be easier to see some of the truth than it's ever been before, because we're getting this stuff fed to us nonstop. I mean, imagine, like, you go back and you look in the days, and they had footage, right? They'd film the war going on. You'd have the press people there, the Mike Wallaces of the world way back in the day, and they're on the ground and they're there and they're doing they're filming it. And then, they would talk afterwards. They're doing interviews like it's a ball game. Right? We're in between innings. Let's go down and talk to the former president, Poroshenko. What's going on? Well, we just, and we're seeing it in real time. So some of that information is going to be very, very real. And others is going to be, take it for a grain of salt. Really, it is. I don't know. But we all know where this is going to go. And we all know how this is going to end. And it's sad. Now, it doesn't mean it ends altogether, but over the next several days, and apparently, well, they were saying 15 days was the thought process of what they thought it would take to do the things that they need to do. We're pretty much a week into it now, and they've taken their first big city. They're moving on, and the battle's going on in their second big city, Kharkov, the second big city, and that battle's been going back and forth. And Kiev, I mean, that's going to be the place where you're going to see the highest level of casualties. And I don't know, again, and where do we fall in this? And that's the other side of it. I know everybody wants to get involved, and we are in some ways, and we're going after everything we possibly can do, including their oligarchs, right? Which is the big thing. We're putting all of the pressure on every single thing that we think we can do that may move people that could potentially have the opportunity to move against Putin. But that's a tough thing. Very tough.
The economic pressure on Vladimir Putin and his inner circle intensifying. The US now threatening to seize the assets of any Russian oligarch, wealthy businessman with ties to the Kremlin, that violates its sanctions. Among them, the CEO of the state oil company Rosneft, another man known as Putin's wallet, and the insurance company Sogaz, partially owned by a close Putin ally. Some Russian oligarchs are calling those sanctions unfair. Others now publicly calling for an end to Putin's war.
And that's a lot of what's going on. You're going to see that. We were talking about this off the air. We want it to end. I find it weird. It's like, guilt through association. And let's be real. 99% of these oligarchs were in positions of some power in the Soviet era, and they just transferred that power from military or spy power or Communist Party power to, hey, now I own all of this land. Oh, look at this. We have oil and we have a gold mine. Those kind of things. But you're going to, you start messing with people's money, right? You start taking people's money and you watch what starts to happen. I've said this, and yesterday I had my buddy come here, Chris, who he runs a huge car dealership out here. And we had a bunch of people in there who were talking, and they were asking me questions about this stuff. And I said, would you start going after money? And I said, Chris, back me up on this. I said, you have salespeople. I said, what do you never do? And he goes, you never mess with their money. I said, you never mess with their money. Right? In today's world, it's different than it was, say, in the 80s. The 80s, 90s, some people now, it's like you work at a place that you hate, but the reality is the money is so great, you're like, I'll stick it out. But when you start to mess with the money, even if you love the place, people will leave. People will leave. And they're going to come hard, and they're going to continue to do so.
We will freeze and seize their yachts, their private jets, their opulent estates in world capitals.
They're doing that. They got the I think it's the biggest yacht on the planet yesterday. The Germans took it. That's because what's his name? Bezos hasn't unleashed his ginormous beast. They took that yesterday, and they're on to something, anywhere they can find these things. And that kid who was following Elon Musk, right? The one that Musk came and said, dude, stop telling people where my plane is going and things of that nature, which is understandable, right? Like, look, there are crazy people out there. You don't need to tell the crazy where I am, especially because I have kids and whatnot. And that kid wouldn't stop. And, Elon offered him all kinds of stuff. Should have offered him a job probably. But now he is following the oligarchs, and he's telling them everywhere they're going to go. And at this point, there's a few places they can go, and they can roll their boats and stuff in there, and their planes, if they still have them, that they can go and hide. But very few. They're going to choke them off. So, and the thought is, we'll do it enough that there eventually somebody's got to say, look, I got $40 billion. I can't have this happen. I got a life and a family. What can I do? Who can I pay to fix this, if you will? 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. Tweet at us. Interesting article about the definition and redefining masculinity. And I found this to be interesting. So the article itself, right, goes into, again, it's Zelensky versus Putin, right? Who's masculine? Who's not masculine? And let's be honest about Putin, right? Putin is the old school masculine, a different kind of masculine, if you would say. That's why some people have this obsession with him. He's riding around, he's playing hockey, and he's riding around on his, fight. He's wrestling a bear and stuff. It's bizarre. We all know that. But they in this thing, and it's on Quartz, QZ.com, masculinity at war. Putin embodies a model of masculine force that much of the modern world is trying to leave behind. He's the kind of big personality that has traditionally dominated geopolitical events in the past, and indeed, it's hard to imagine the current situation where Russia not led by an aggressive autocrat. You're like, yeah, that's who it is. And then it talks about Zelensky, different kind of male leader, one without a strongman charisma that has traditionally been associated with military leadership and a wartime courage. Well, man, hold on a second. How do you know that? He's a comic. He is a huge personality. And people aren't going to follow somebody who doesn't have, quote unquote, that masculinity. They're not. They're not. They're not following somebody who they think is, this guy's a weasel. This is not. No. He has all of those things. And his personality is big, by the way. If you've ever watched some of his stuff, he is a big personality. He's very charismatic. Very much so. And you can be a big personality without being a Richard, by the way. But I love this one. Putin shot tigers. Zelensky danced the cha-cha because he won the Dancing with the Stars. And the way they break these things down is, essentially, what we think about him. First of all, Putin's 69. Let's be honest, okay? Take away the who Putin is. Think of the average 70-year-old Russian who lived through the Cold War, the bitterness and the hardness of what they went through. They're probably all a little bit kind of stoic and gruff. Zelensky's 44, right? He's not lived the easiest life, but it's different. It's different. It is. But he still has all of the qualities of being quote unquote masculine. He's just not a Richard. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he's hunted and this guy hasn't hunted. It's crazy. And we're going to talk more about masculinity coming up. We're going to talk about what Sam Elliott said on WTF, which is Mark Maron's podcast about The Power of the Dog, which is nominated for like 5,000 Academy Awards. And when the movie came out, it was like, oh, this is definitely this is going to redefine what masculinity is, because everybody's always trying to redefine masculinity, and they always want to redefine it in a way that makes them feel comfortable. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is my Twitter. Tweet at us, text the program. Calibrate. You want to lose weight? Of course you do. Make it great with Calibrate. I made that up right there. I did. Go to joincalibrate.com right now, and code Chad's going to give you $50 off 1 year metabolic reset. Now, what is that? Okay, so metabolic reset is many of us out there, we've tried to lose weight, and we've gotten to a place where our body's kind of comfortable, and we stay there for a while, and all of a sudden, when we start to lose weight, then we don't lose weight. And the reason is because our metabolism has essentially started to freak out and thinks that we were at the weight we were supposed to be and wants us to get back there. So it just stops right there. And you're like, oh, it gets so frustrating. And you could be eating nothing. I had a head of lettuce for the last 3 weeks. That's it. It doesn't matter at that point. And when you do start to lose weight, it's all muscle. And that's not what you want. With Calibrate, you're going to get FDA-approved medication. You're going to get a video doctor visit, one-on-one coaching. They're going to show you through lifestyle changes that aren't insane, that are actually livable. And, yes, the FDA-approved medication, you're going to see weight loss in a major way. On average, earliest members lost 15+% of their body weight. Oh, that's huge. So let's say you were 210, right? And you lost 20%. You're down in the 40-pound range, and you're not making massive lifestyle changes. You're just resetting your metabolism. It is amazing to see, and it works, and it fits into anybody's lifestyle. Go to joincalibrate.com right now. Get a $50 off your 1 year metabolic reset. Joincalibrate.com. Joincalibrate.com. Use code Chad. Use code Chad to save that $50. Chad Benson Show.
If you like talk radio like Chad Benson likes his meals, you've come to the perfect place for takeout.
The JetBlue flight was set to leave the Buffalo airport at around 6:15 in the morning, but a TSA officer noticed the pilot didn't look right going through security. Police removed the 52-year-old pilot from the cockpit when he blew a .17 blood alcohol content, 4 times the legal limit for pilots. The local transportation authorities, Helen Teteris.
He was taken into custody, and we called federal officials.
A police report says a pilot admitted to having 7 to 8 drinks at dinner the night before, but was heard on the phone saying he had 10 tall boys and left the restaurant around midnight. Alex.
Hold on a second. First of all, I don't know if I want my pilot drinking tall boys anywhere. Secondly, shouldn't the legal limit for a pilot be just 0? Like, that should be this guy was so drunk that he would have probably gotten pulled over, and he would have had to have one of those things where next time he goes to fly, he has to blow into it before it starts the plane. That guy was hammered. Like, so hammered. It's incredible. Remember, in the air, 30,000 feet above the ground, there is no option to pull over. Let everybody understand. 10 tall boys. Sir, I think we have a problem. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Tweet at us. Text the program. Love hearing from all of you. Major League Baseball, definitely going to be striking. I was reading this earlier. I just found this interesting. Talk about a sport that's kicking themselves right square in the crandle. You're going on strike, right? This is the time of the year where everybody goes, oh, baseball's back. It's kind of fun. Baseball's cool. Summertime sport, the whole 9 yards. And now you're going, it's not strike, you're being locked out. So you're done for now. And I just laugh because what's football doing? Well, they're getting ready for their combine. Right, they got the draft coming up in like 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is. They are dominating while not playing. Like, that's when you know that you are it. Even when you do nothing, you still dominate. Even when you do, when the biggest, what used to be our national pastime, and it's not. They call it themselves that. It's like the Cowboys call themselves America's team. That's just, you're not the pastime anymore. The pastime that we have now is football. Football is a religion. It's not even a pastime. The thought, though, that you're giving up this situation and the owners are trying to break the players and the players want what they think they deserve, and it's understandable that, you want what's best for you. We can all go for that. But the whole thought process of also not reading the room and going, these guys over here are kicking our ass. And if we don't understand how to make the sport different, we're fighting over dollars, when the reality is they're fighting over dominance. They're fighting over hundreds, and we're fighting over dollars. Adapt or die. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show, your Twitter. Tweet at us. The Russian airline system has now been crippled. They have been taken off Sabre, which is the online reservation now. So it's getting uglier for them while they make it uglier for the Ukrainians. Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Just telling the boys watching it's just war in real time in a way that is totally different. You got Zelensky, right? Like, that guy is, he's just, you look at him, we would say in England, well, gosh, well hard, isn't he, mate? I mean, he's tough, he's nails, isn't he? He is. He's having a press conference. So dude's having a press conference. And I said, man, he just looks absolutely beyond exhausted. You don't even know what to call it at this point in time. And Phil goes, wouldn't you be? Trying to kill you. But I just find it fascinating that it's like, all right, I got to go now because I got to, rally around the troops and we got to get this thing going. Knowing he's walking out there and there are packs of hunters, as the Chechens call them, who are trying to kill him as enemy number one. And think about that. Enemy number one. We are coming for you. Dude does not give up. Again, they got all the heart, and they're fighting as hard as they can. It's understandable that we as human beings, we didn't see this in Syria because we didn't see it. Right? We didn't see this in parts of Africa because we didn't see it. We just don't. I mean, if you saw it, we would be just, what do we do? We understand the geopolitical side of this in a way that we don't in other places. We're like, it's Syria, right? Like, don't they, it's the Middle East. Don't they all just hate each other? Right? In Africa, I mean, every other day there seems to be a civil war somewhere. And it's but this geopolitical side of things, this is the difference between a civil war, too, let's be real, and what the potential of this is globally that you're not going to have in other places. And MSNBC paints all the time, it's racism, it's all because they're white. And you're like, shut up. The ramifications of this, if it goes south, are pretty damn big. And that's the other side of it. We want to do all that we possibly could do. It's like everybody, it's like, what can we do? What can we do? How can we do something? What can we do? And it's not a lot you're going to be able to do. Not at this point in time. The no-fly zone, that's a big thing. Like, just something. What could you do? What could you do? Here's the big thing, you know what? And they were right. If we want to be able to to be able to do anything. We need to implore our leaders, put all the sanctions you can on it, put everything on it. And if it means our gas goes up to $5 a gallon on average across the country at this moment in time to do what we can to help these people, that could be each and every one of us sacrifice as best that we possibly can, because that's not a lot. And it sucks because we're dealing already with higher prices and stuff, inflation, supply chain issues. We are in it pisses us off, but that might be the best that we're going to be able to do are those sanctions, because getting involved outside of this kind of sanction things means something wholly different.
No-fly zone, it's a nice idea, but the Russian Air Force has been essentially missing in action. It's not the aerial bombardment, it's the artillery. A no-fly zone would do nothing for that, and it would put U.S. and NATO aircraft in direct confrontation with Russian aircraft, and that could lead to a much broader global war.
That's right. A much broader global war, which will have ramifications much larger than Syria, much larger than parts of Africa that have no democracy and just, raging civil wars, a kind of scenario that we have never even seen. We see it in movies. I mean, we see it in movies. The kind of weapons we have now. You look at like Nagasaki and you go and look at what we did, right? And you're like, okay, that was an atom bomb and it killed a lot of people. People have made arguments that the carpet bombing they did in places throughout Japan with the thatched roofs were 10 times worse. But that right there is massive. The hydrogen bombs, another world. Another world. The fallout, the damage, the destruction, every place on the planet will feel it. So those ramifications are massive. And you walk that fine line of doing everything we can to get involved and at the same time also understanding there is a place that we can go to that we have to stop at. And that's the place we're at now. Now, that all bets are off if and we're going to ask Mike Lyons this at the bottom of the hour. He is going to push on to Moldova. It's the question of, is one of the Balkans, is Estonia or Latvia, are they in a position where, being a NATO country, that he may want to try something? And if we got involved now, does he use a nuclear weapon? But if he attacks a NATO country and we come in conventionally, does he say no because, well, he attacked them? So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to ask Mike about that. He's going to join us at the bottom of the hour. It is ugly, it is nasty, and we feel these things. We're seeing what's happening in the global marketplace. We're understanding that these prices are going through the roof, and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. And by the way, pre this, and some of this was built into it, the fundamentals were built into it because of what was going on, but even pre the war and pre the invasion, the fact is we had started to consume the same amount of fuel that we were doing prior to COVID. So prior to COVID, we were consuming a lot. Once COVID hit, man, it fell. It just, and now the rally's on, and the consumption is up, but we're not producing as much, and even the places that can consume, they're fine holding steady where they're at because the money they're making is ungodly.
130 on the way to who knows.
Yeah, who knows where it's going to stop? People are now ratcheting up, 120, 125. It's like an auction. Crude oil hitting $113 a barrel here overnight, more than $115 in Europe overnight. One of the main reasons is that Russian supplies are simply off the market. I mean, Russia is the third biggest producer of oil in the world, about 11 million barrels a day. You take a third of that off because you can't buy it. And even if you could buy it, you can't transport it because nobody's going to lease you a super tanker because it could get seized because of all the sanctions.
Yeah. And how do you buy it? I mean, right now, in theory, you could purchase oil. We have actual oil from Russia on the way here. That was stuff that was purchased, was already sold, bought, paid for, the whole 9 yards, put in the tankers and on their way here right now. There's nothing coming after this. There's nothing. There isn't. And so that's being felt. And other parts of the globe aren't going to be dealing with Russia, and that's going to be part of their issue. And is China going to be able to buy enough to sustain them in this? I don't think they're going to, but it means that we're going to face it at the pump. And it's easy for me to say, you know what, it's worth it for me. But the average American is thinking, and we should also be looking, again, I go back to why are we not energy independent? Well, there was a lot of reasons why, but it's time to start reopening things. And if you're Biden, you as a leader need to come out and say, hey, greenies, I hear what you're saying. We do need to find better ways. We need to find stable ways, consistent ways, stuff that we know we can trust, things that are better for the planet. But I would have us be in control in a way that makes it as clean as it possibly can be, rather than us sit here and have to kowtow to countries who hate our guts, who use our money to fight against us, whether it be through cyber warfare or actual warfare. It's time for us to become energy independent and do it in the smartest way. And if you love nature and you love the environment and you love the planet, know that they don't. And we'll do a better job at this and trying to lower carbon emissions than they're going to. It's not a hard pitch. It's not. But it's a pitch he won't make because, again, politics. Politics. But he's going to find out in a few months that politics of rising inflation, and God knows where gas is going to be at, and some of that is partially on us, that you're going to be in a position where you're like, I want to try new politics because this isn't the politics I like. And that's the politics of crushing your pocketbook. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. Tweet at us, text the program. Love hearing from all of you. Car Shield, speaking of cars, 24/7 roadside assistance, which is awesome, right? So your car breaks down. You're like, oh, my God, what do I do? You call Car Shield. So Car Shield comes to pick you up. They say, what do you want us to take it? You're like, well, wait, I get to choose? Yeah, you get to choose. Well, I'd like to take it to my favorite mechanic. You take it there. Favorite mechanic says it's going to cost this. Car Shield gets involved right there. Boom. They pay the mechanic. You pay a small deductible. They handle the paperwork, and away you go. Oh, I like that. Yeah, a million drivers been helped by Car Shield. Why not be one of them? They've got plans to fit anybody's budget from top to bottom. If your car's got 5,000 miles to 150,000 miles, do not hesitate to call Car Shield, especially because so many people out there have got their cars, they've held on to them longer, and guess what happens? They've got no warranty anymore. Protect yourself, protect your car, protect your pocketbook. That's right, kids. Get yourself Car Shield. Go to carshield.com/Benson to save 10% right there. Carshield.com/Benson. Carshield.com/Benson. A deductible may apply. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show, where we reach across the aisle and occasionally poke someone in the eye.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
Now it's time to find out what's trending. What's trending? Yeah, what does that mean? I mean something, right? Like it's trending on the old internet. What's trending? Take a peek on the old inter of webs. Find out what's trending. Start over in magical world of Twitter, where everybody fights all the time. LSAT. Apparently last night, Tucker Carlson questions why President Biden didn't mention Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson's LSAT. It's the law school admissions test score. Whatever. Again, it's you're playing to an audience. Lavrov, the outspoken a-hole from Russia, again, coming out, talking about nuclear war. I don't know why, let's remind Putin and everybody, we were supposed to have a Minuteman test this weekend, and we've called it off because we don't want to escalate things. This was something that was planned for a while. And I'm like, well, why? Well, because we don't escalate things. That ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. So maybe every once in a great while, there's a reminder that needs to be set. Yes, you've got nuclear weapons, and they're dangerous, and they would destroy, and they're damaging. Guess what? So do we. Just throwing it out there. Oh, wow, I never thought about that. Yeah, not a lot of people have. It's World Book Day. What's a book? Exactly. Chad, you read a lot. I read all the time. And I listen to a lot of books on tape. Sometimes I'll be reading something and listening to something. It's very bizarre. I just do that. My brain's wired that way. But if you have a chance, go out and grab a book. Okay. Merrick Garland's trending because the Attorney General has announced the launch of multi-agency task force. They're going to pursue corrupt Russian oligarchs and violators of sanctions imposed against these Russians after the invasion of Ukraine. I know they're going after the likes of Roman Abramovich, who is the oligarch who is probably the most famous of the oligarchs. He is young. He bought the Chelsea Football Club some 20 years ago when he was, I think, like 30 years old. And he turned them into a powerhouse. And he announced he was going to sell the team yesterday. And so it's very interesting to see how they're going to go after him. They call him Putin's Bank. Over on Google, Gerson, the Russian forces have seized the city there, and that is it. Fitbit recall. If you have a Fitbit, it's been recalled. Certain ones, smartwatches, due to burn hazards. Is it because I'm running so fast? It is not because you're running so fast. Trust me. Bullet Train. I love this. I saw this trailer yesterday. I was excited about it. The book is cool. Imagine John Wick and a little Pulp Fiction on a train starring Brad Pitt. Samurai swords, hitmen. Yeah, it looks humor. It looks awesome. Oh, I can't wait to see that. It's going to be cool. It's going to be cool. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Tweet at us, text the program. Love hearing from every single one of you. Those oligarchs, man, going after them, it's going to be interesting. What they do, how they do it. You know, like right now, you can take their jets, you're going to take their yachts. What about their kids? Man, there's a ton of these kids that live here. They go to college here. Get them out of here. That's what we're going to do. You're going to go hard. Well, should we punish them? It's weird, right? Because I feel weird. Like you're going and taking somebody's guilt by association thing. Yes, we know that a lot of these are probably somewhat ill-gotten gains. But up until 3 weeks ago, many of our countries and many of our businesses in those countries were dealing with some of these people. But the whole thought is put pressure as much as you can on people that are close enough potentially to Putin that either they can get to him and or get to him, if you know what I mean. And he falls out of a window or trips down a flight of stairs or whatever he ends up doing to people. Navalny, did he try to poison him through his underwear? That's some stuff right there, man. Going after a dude's unit? Like, oh, it's not cool. Mike Lyons, our military analyst, retired Army major, served in numerous theaters, if you will, battle theaters. He's going to join us straight ahead, talk about what's going on, what's the next step, and is there an off-ramp at this point in time? Plus, we're going to ask him that question. If he attacks a NATO country and we get involved, does he use a nuke, or does he think, well, you know what, I attack them? Or at this point, does anybody know? He joins us straight ahead. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
The march is on to Kyiv, and it is getting uglier. He's been with us every step of the way, breaking it down for us as really like nobody is. See him all over television. Of course, hear him on numerous stations across the country. Retired U.S. Army Major and military analyst Mike Lyons joins us. And Mike, the first of the big-ish cities has fallen. It's the third largest city there. And it is starting to look a lot like what you said it was going to be. Little slog, but eventually you're going to see the might start to pay off.
Hey, Chad, it did take a while for the Russian war machine to get cranked up. I think, they still have challenges, no question, in the north, but in Kherson now, where they are claiming that they own that town, which is just north and west of Crimea, they've put a lot of energy towards it, beach landings, Marines, the whole thing. I'm sure U.S. naval assets watched while it was all going down. We thought we were going to get some help from the Turks, but that really didn't materialize. But again, those were difficult incursions, I'm sure. But it looks like this is all part of this kind of southern create a land bridge, true land bridge between Crimea and Russia, as well as they're looking to now go to Odessa, which is further west, which is really the main port of Ukraine, which now if that gets taken, then Ukraine then becomes fundamentally isolated from any kind of seaworthy entry points into the country.
It is. It's feeling now he's ramping it up, and it went from at first you were wondering, okay, they're fighting the soldiers, and as we've talked about on numerous occasions, is soldier versus soldier is one thing, but now you're getting to the point where it just feels indiscriminate. He seems to be on a march of destruction at this point.
Yeah, it does look like a scorched earth strategy. So I now think he's past the point of no return. He's no longer worrying about being hauled in front of the tribunal in The Hague, because I think now, there's no way he gets out of this unless, he stops this. There's going to be another kind of consequence. So I think we've got to really now think about what that really means. Who's to say he's going to stop here in Ukraine? Although the other side to it, though, is, if you do kind of insurgency math, they really still don't have enough troops there to control this country of 40 million people, of what's going on in Ukraine in these cities. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of insurgencies. He's going to have to declare martial law in Russia. He's going to have to institute a draft. He's going to, all of the country is going to have to decide to get involved with this. We just don't know where that is just yet. And, again, made some really bad initial assumptions, and the military performed poorly for the first 6 days. And still fundamentally performing poorly. Up in Kyiv, for example, that convoy still has not taken any kind of tactical positions. They still are kind of one after the other. They are out of fuel. They're out of food. We're seeing more stories there. And I know that the supplies are absolutely pouring into Poland right now. And once we get our side cranked up, which in asymmetrical warfare, I think you're going to see, a lot more of fighting back taking place in those northern cities where we're closer to our supply lines.
Talking to a retired U.S. Army Major who's been in the theater of war, as well as a military analyst, Mike Lyons, joined us. Are you surprised by the amount of damage these ragtag group of people in some areas, as well as their military, has been able to do to some of their more sophisticated stuff, their tanks and things of that nature?
I am. The fact that the Ukraine Air Force is still flying is a miracle on some level, and shows you the incompetence of really Russian military and their Air Force. And I thought initially when we first talked, they were going to go after all those military targets, and Russia really hasn't. They haven't decided what they're going after. They seem to pick and choose. Now they're going after the built up barriers. They're going after places where they're not winning hearts and minds. But and the fact that 180 or so, 200 main battle tanks have been knocked out, that is just an incredible number. I mean, if this was the United States, we wouldn't tolerate that for 2 seconds. Our tanks are survivable, and these pictures of tanks with the tops blown off on them, I just still can't get over. Because it also takes a lot of guts, no matter what. It's easy to just throw a javelin and say, hey, yeah, we're just going to shoot tanks. It takes a lot of guts to stand at a distance where you're going to be seen as well. It's a line of sight weapon fundamentally. And while you paint the target and you can get away, it does leave a signature. You're going to expose yourself to it. And the fact that the Ukraine military and civilians are doing it is just unbelievable. And again, these are just going to start pouring into the country. every country on earth is now participating. Sweden and Switzerland, all these formerly neutral countries. So that's turning quickly against the world here. And maybe if we get creative, we can figure out more ways to get even more combat power into these Ukraine citizens. I hope we can do that.
Talking about combat power, it is also an area where you are seeing people who have military experience, who don't like what's going on, who are not associated with the Ukrainians or Russians, but see what's happening in Ukraine and they want to fight. Mercenaries, but they're not fighting for money. They're showing up there it seems to be and it's getting louder. Zelensky had that call last week. If you want to come fight for freedom, come fight for us. Is that going to have any effect?
I think so. I think, first of all, 50,000 Ukraine citizens that weren't living in Ukraine have returned to fight. That's just, again, an incredible number. It's almost 2 divisions if you're putting a military term on it. And those are all men. They're not, women and children. So that's going to be a big factor. And for sure, I don't want to necessarily say that's going to tip the balance one way or the other. And there's going to have to be some discipline because those units sometimes, too, are undisciplined and they don't do what they're supposed to do. But you get the right special operators, special forces groups that are from all over the world that maybe they are going to get paid. Who knows? Maybe, the foundations will start to sprout up and maybe people will start get paid to do this because it's of the moral outrage of what's taking place. They could influence certain areas. They could delay Russia taking over certain things. They'll bring to the battlefield experience and they'll bring smarts. That's probably what the Ukraine citizen and soldier is missing right now. Whether we like it or not, Russia does have battlefield experience from what they did in Syria. Same kind of stuff now, blow things up, not really worry about the rules of law and land warfare. But I do think they would be impactful, but like everything else, there'll be a downside if they're not monitored and made sure they're doing the right thing.
Talking to a retired Army major and military analyst, Mike Lyons. He's been keeping us abreast of all the things that are going on. Really, just you've been spot on with this thing. I look out there and the battles that are going on, they're getting more and more ferocious. We're seeing more and more casualties. And again, truth is the first casualty of war. But the numbers are starting to pile up. And, 7,000 here, 9,000 there, depends on who you're talking to. The reality of what you've talked about in the past is being able to have enough bodies, if you will, to fight this war. You said Russia was undermanned. Is there anything behind there? Because there doesn't seem to be an indication that they're sending more troops out there to the battlefield.
Yeah, I've seen these 2 kinds of reports that say they've only deployed 60% of those forces. I'm not seeing that because what I see based on what's on the roads and the convoys, my math says that the majority of them are deployed. And in fact, they're calling this a special operation. They're not calling it, any kind of campaign, which leads me to think when their planners, when their general staff was putting this together, that they thought this was going to be over by now because there's no second echelon. It doesn't appear to me. Now, the Russian doctrine says that that's what they do. They attack in echelons. And if you go back to Cold War strategies, for example, they had organizational, operational military groups that were designed to go and if there's a problem in a certain spot, like Kyiv, for example, they could easily assemble 50 to 60,000 troops and move them to that spot. None of that is happening. We're not seeing any reinforcements on any of these avenues of approach. They just keep kind of coming in one big circle as an encirclement. There's no real tactical movement to what they're doing. So they're not following their own doctrine. Now, the United States doesn't always follow its own doctrine either when we fight. But I can tell you this, our soldiers and NCOs and officers are taught more about initiative and leadership and to, do the right thing or, do good things in the face of the absence of guidance. I don't see that happening on the Russian side. Again, lining up on a road where you're going to get picked off as an important convoy member just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So complete failure in so many ways of the Russian military. And the question is, what fails first? Does the citizens of Russia say enough's enough and do something about it? Do the Russian soldiers on the ground say, you know what, I'm not going to commit these atrocities? Or does the officers and the military keep, try to push forward to get Ukraine to surrender? That's really what we're at right now.
Ukraine will probably fall. I think we realize that if we're being honest with ourselves. I mean, plucky as they can be, all the things that they are, the reality is they're going up against, a force that is mightier and for whatever reason, they're bent on this destruction. And I think that's the way they're going to go about it now. At this point, it's no longer strategic. It's just let's destroy. Then the question becomes, who's next? Moldova seems to be it. What if he decides to say, I want to see what NATO will do? Who would be that country he would look at?
It's the Baltics. It's right in Latvia and Lithuania, in north of Belarus, and it's a logistical advantage for him. He has a small strip of land there on the Baltics there that Russia is fundamentally Russia, and he want to bring it all together. It makes the most sense, which is why I think we've got to get some combat power into the Baltics as soon as we can. I know helicopters and the like. I guess the other question is how we're looking at this, and is this a NATO fight, or is this going to be a Europe and an all-world fight? So, for example, Sweden and Finland are not in NATO, but they could decide to join any kind of military operation. And in the past, we'd consider NATO to be this tripwire, let's say, and one of the reasons why we didn't want to put the smaller countries in is because, you trip on the small country. Next thing you know, you've got the Third World War. We just might be there, though, and it's hard for me to say that, but we might be at that spot where this is the Third World War, and that's where he's going to take this to. And we just never thought this was going to happen. We thought mutually assured destruction would keep, the Russian bear from doing something like this, but maybe not. And I think we've got to, really be prepared. You heard Lazarov say the foreign minister say something like, we're going to finish this to the end. If it goes nuclear, it's going to be really ugly. I mean, we just don't threaten like that. We hadn't threatened like that in the last 40 years, but unfortunately, that's where we are.
If he attacks NATO, and obviously NATO gets involved, nuclear is on the table. What does that look like?
Right. And yeah. And so this is where now there's going to be two camps within the military community, our side. And that's going to be first strike or not first strike. And there's going to be that will say, we can't do this from a moral perspective. We can't strike first. We can't, because from our perspective, if he attacks NATO, what's to keep us from going after Moscow or going after, some of the other larger military targets? There's going to be some that are going to say, if we don't strike first, then he's going to strike first and he's going to kill us and he's going to strike here, our homeland, which he's got capacity to do. And that capacity doesn't necessarily come from Mother Russia, comes from submarines that are in the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean that are pointed at us every day. So that's a great question. And so the calculus has got to be whether we think he's going to strike first or not. And if we do strike first, it's out of survival. But that, again, gets us down a very slippery slope as well.
Anyway, Mike, that cooler, calmer heads inside of the Kremlin. We heard that the FSB apparently tipped off people inside the Ukrainian government about some of these, these Chechen, hitmen that were out there. Is there any way that an oligarch says, screw this, I got as much money as anybody, we can get this thing done, we can get this guy out of here? Or has he got such power and surrounded himself in such a way that there is nobody that can stop him?
He can be stopped, of course, and it's just a matter of the right, plan and focus. We saw this happen in the Second World War. All the people that came out at the end that wanted to try to stop Hitler before they stopped him, and they failed for lots of different reasons, because it takes a certain amount of guts and luck and all that to go through with it. Chad, last week I thought that we were going to maybe get an off ramp and we're going to save face, and that was going to be a situation where maybe he keeps some of the land in the South and the whole thing. But from now, it looks like he's not stopping. So he's going to have to be stopped at some point, and he's not going to be the leader of Russia. Like, this is where this is going. He's either going to be the leader of Russia, and we're in World War III, or he's not the leader of Russia, and we're back to where we were, G-5 or G, in a situation where the world, we didn't have, war in the European continent, which is something we just never thought we'd ever see again. And in the Cold War era, we never thought we would see it again. But again, here we are. He can be stopped. It can be stopped from a lot of different forces. It's going to take some luck, and it's going to take some guts inside of Russia and what's going on there.
Oh, man, scary to talk to, but love the fact that you keep us abreast of everything. A former and retired U.S. Army Major, and Mike Lyons here, military analyst, catch him all over the place. Appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. At Chad Benson Show, Twitter, ChadBenson. Talk a bit about this when we come back. Again, it is scary because I think he's right. I think now it's too late to stop him. The off-ramps are done, and you're talking war crimes and stuff. Is this kind of what we're looking at now? Talk about it straight ahead. Chad Benson Show.
Podcasts are American as hot dogs, apple pie, football, and sushi.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Okay, maybe not sushi. Next time you have a craving for something sweet and tangy, download a Chad Benson Show podcast.
Boy, that is good. It's different because you get a little bit of saltiness. It's so good because it's sweet and salty at the same time.
Get a taste on iTunes, iHeart, or Spotify and binge to your ears' content.
Oh, yeah.
You're listening to The Chad Benson Show.
Here's Mike Lyons' interview. Check out the podcast. Somebody said that the tone is much different. And some of the people I've talked to and been conversing with over this, the tone is definitely different. And he said something today, too, that just, it felt different.
Never thought this was going to happen. We thought mutually assured destruction would keep, the Russian bear from doing something like this, but maybe not. And I think we've got to, really be prepared. You heard Lazarov say, the foreign minister say something like, we're going to finish this to the end. If it goes nuclear, it's going to be really ugly. I mean, we just don't threaten like that. We hadn't threatened like that in the last 40 years, but unfortunately, that's where we are.
Yeah. And he also talked about the fact there's no more off-ramp. The war crimes, he's never going to end up at The Hague. This isn't going to happen. And that painting himself in a way, basically he's burning the boats, so the only way is forward or death. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Shows your Twitter. Tweet at us, text the program. Love hearing from you. Calibrate. Man, losing weight's tough. Trust me, I know. You get to a certain age, you're like, man, this sucks, right? And then you're working out, you think, I'm doing good, I feel good. Right, but what's wrong? It's your metabolism, right? And your metabolism gets wonky. And when it gets wonky, what do you have to do? You got to try to reset the thing, right? You ever had something where it's like, it's not working, right? So I'm going to Control-Alt-Delete. Imagine doing that, and this is what Calibrate does. Control-Alt-Deletes, if you will, through FDA-approved medication, your metabolism. Resets it in such a way where, guess what? It starts to understand that as you lose weight, it's a healthy thing, and you can reestablish your weight at a healthy weight. On average, Calibrate's earliest members lost well over 15% of their body weight, and they're down 20, 30, 40% now. That could be you. Small lifestyle changes with FDA-approved medication is a win. Calibrate is that. You're going to get one-on-one coaching. You get an app to work with. On top of that, you also get video doctor visits. Try it now. JoinCalibrate.com. Use promo code Chad. You get $50 off right there. JoinCalibrate.com, $50 off. JoinCalibrate.com for a 1-year metabolic reset. At Chad Benson Show, Twitter, ChadBenson. Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Great interview last hour with Mike Lyons, retired Army major, served in several theaters of war as well as military analyst. And it's the first time that we've talked to him as he's broken this stuff down. He's been with us on numerous occasions. Check out the podcast. It's very interesting. But a few things he said, and one of the things that stuck with me is there's a no-go now for Putin. Earlier today, I was talking to one of the guys that works here really early because, that's what I do. We were talking, and so on the road in, because they're just taking roads, because they, for whatever reason, they're just, hey, let's get a single file line and we'll just head on in. We got this. The ground didn't freeze the way that they wanted them to. They didn't want to get bogged down, so they're just taking it in, probably thinking they weren't going to get a ton of pushback. That being said, they were putting the signs, the signs up there like Kyiv this way and Gershon this way and what all this stuff, and Odessa this way, and then they change it to go blank yourself. Now they're putting up signs with that says The Hague, and if you don't know what The Hague is, basically, that's where they take you for war crimes, is The Hague, and that's where they try you. And he said, Mike Lyons said, Putin understands now. There is nothing else. There is nothing else. He's not here to win the hearts and minds of people who he's going to try to trick into thinking that they were, being overrun by the West and the Nazis and that's what it is, and that they were going to take away everything. He's here now to destroy. And he's here for some, like, it's almost like he's got this God complex that is so, I mean, I don't even know how you would describe something like this. He's at that point where it's suicidal, because he's like, there is no more off-ramp for him. There is no more off-ramp. I mean, at this point, and listening to Mike Lyons, but also listening to several other people and reading several other things, the only off-ramp left is an absolute essential, you're living on your own in Russia, completely walled off to the world. Your oligarchs are there. Your people are there. You are shunned. And that might be the best scenario we have left. Well, the other scenario. I was talking to the guys off air. I said, man, we put up all kinds of money, wanted for the information of X, Y, and Z. Maybe not so much us, but there's got to be. There's just got to be an oligarch who's seeing their crap get towed away and thinking to themselves, damn if that's going to happen. And I know Putin, and and I had to meet with him, but I didn't like the guy, and he didn't like me. Because remember, some of these oligarchs, and there's a decent amount, they too were at one time KGB members, and maybe not on the same kind of level as Putin, but as far as it's like, keep your enemies closer kind of thing. But nobody's going to say, you know what, I got $30 billion. I'll give somebody $500 million and they snuff this cat out. We don't need this. Are you suggesting? Would you really cry tonight if Putin was gone? Answer me this question. Would the world be better if he was not in it? I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. Here's the sad thing. We have a part to play in this, right? Like, we looked at Yeltsin and we're like, that guy's just a big drunk fatty, just getting hammered all the time and dancing. We need somebody a little bit more stable. And, this Putin guy seems to be all right. But you never know what happens. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. Tweet at me. Today, though, was the first time, and again, I implore you to go check out that interview with Mike Lyons, Spotify, iHeart, Chad Benson Show. It's just he was much more, there was a certain amount of pessimism and a certain sense that we are now on that road to World War III. And I joked with him, but it was only a half joke. Do we need to buy iodine pills? There's been a run on of them in Europe, by the way. Iodine pills. And if you know what that is, think nuclear fallout kind of thing. I mean, that's the kind of sense you could hear it in his voice of there is no off-ramp. There's nowhere to go but forward. They talk about burning the boats, right? So the samurais or they would show up and they burn the boats, meaning the stand is coming here. We're either going to go forward and survive and we're going to carve out something here, or we all die here. There's no other option. There's no running. Like, oh, geez. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Tweet at us, text the program. Zelensky, though, who is in the midst of the battle today, spoke to the people, wants to let everybody know, first and foremost, as he does early in the morning, he's still there.
In a morning message to the unbreakable people of invincible Ukraine, President Zelensky said the nation broke Russia's plans in a week, and he spoke directly to any Russian soldiers listening. Go home, he said. Tell your commanders that you want to live, not to die. Zelensky's defiance came as Russian troops gained ground in parts of the south and threatened to sever Ukraine's access to the Black Sea.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it's looking like they're doing now. They've got the third biggest city there, and they're moving forward and forward. And it's what they're doing now is not about being greeted as liberators, as the BS that he told his people. It is not about I don't even know at this point in time if it's about occupation or destruction. I feel like it's more about destruction than anything else. Igor Novikov, former advisor to Zelensky, spoke earlier today on MSNBC.
And foremost, I have no doubt of what's going on. People think it's some sort of a way to kind of build back the USSR or something like that. But no, for President Putin, undoubtedly, this is a war of genocide against the Ukrainian people, the people who are the thorn in his side, the people who kind of are living proof to the Russian people and to the people around the world that, there's liberty, there's freedom, and there's human rights beyond the Kremlin walls.
Yeah. Remember what you want to know the biggest thing he's scared of? Putin? It isn't the nuclear war, right? Because I think he feels like I'll survive it. It isn't that. It isn't total destruction. It's a land where Russia isn't the Russia that he wants it to be, where he's in charge, he's in control. It's about the motherland and their power. And what he saw in the Ukraine was a fledgling 30-year-old democracy that had stumbled and fumbled and fall so many times, more than they ever walked, starting to get it together, where they had freedoms, they had opportunities, they had choice, they had independence, and it's too close to him, and he felt uncomfortable, because that is something that gets back to his people, the influence of the West. And it's the West, he talks, again, it's always at us because, he's the bear, right? It's what it's always about. He's the Russian bear. And I guess we're the tiger, which is cool. Tiger beat a bear. But it's all the West, right? It is seeped into everything that is Russia now. It's Levi jeans, it's concerts, it's going on fun vacations, it's Mickey Mouse and Netflix, it's Hulu and NBA basketball, it is Coca-Cola, it is all of the things. And with that comes the fact that they're more into peace and chilling and hanging out and playing with their Apple phones than they are the great dreams that he has of whatever it is he has. Because the further it gets away from those things for him, the worse it gets for him, the better it is for the people. And it was now or never, I think, in his mind of, I've got to do something if I'm going to bring the great motherland back to whatever. I don't know what he thinks it's going to be. I don't know. What I do know, though, is it's going to get much uglier in the coming days. It is. It's going to get much, much uglier. They are no longer in a place where they're trying to be strategic. It is now just fire away.
Russia intensifying its invasion, increasingly hitting civilian as well as military targets, striking an ammunition dump outside Kharkiv, and a battle now raging for control of the country's second largest city. Once again, Russia hitting civilian sites, striking the city's university. Over 2,000 people have been killed throughout the country since the Russian invasion began a week ago, according to Ukrainian officials.
And I don't know how many people have been killed overall. I mean, you're hearing stories of 9,000. You hear stories about, that's just 9,000 supposedly Russian soldiers.
Наша армія робить все для того, щоб зламати ворога остаточно. Майже 9 тисяч вбитих.
That was him earlier today going, hey, we killed 9,000. I don't really know if that's true. They also talked today about the fact that their doctors are treating injured Russian soldiers because the Russians they've got a crematorium with them because they don't want to see body bags. That's not a good look. So they got a crematorium with them, and the ones that are shot and they think are dead at this moment, they're not picking them up. They're just leaving them there. It's kind of like Mount Everest, right? You don't bring a body back from Mount Everest. You go understanding that if something goes wrong, you being saved is not an option because people have to save themselves, and so you die on the mountain, you get left on the mountain. And it's kind of one of those things where the ones who are injured are being actually treated by the many of the doctors and people that they're fighting against. And I'm sure there's tons of confusion. You're a 19-year-old kid, right, from the middle of godforsaken nowhere, Russia. And, you're now spent the last 6 months sitting in bizarre conditions, the border of the Ukraine, doing exercises, being bored. And then you're thrust upon this and you're told, for the last, since you were born, that the Ukrainians are your brothers and sisters and they're the heartbeat of Russia. And now you're going in there and you're shooting them. I'm sure there's confusion. I'm sure there's plenty of it. And it's going to get ugly. It is. And it's sad. And it's going to get a lot uglier. And the difference between now and probably, for any time ever in history is what we're about to see will take place in real time. Not in black and white footage on the military channel 50, 60, 70 years later. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Check us out across all the social media stuff, your Facebook, the whole 9 yards. Rough Greens makes any pet food better. My dog Doodle, trust me, he is... how he's still alive, I don't know, man. That dog keeps on going. He's got probably a little Ukrainian spirit in him. For whatever reason... He's old. He should have probably passed. We should probably put him to sleep a while ago. And so we thought about doing. Started giving them Rough Greens, though. Man, giving it to him. And in the last 2.5, 3 years, his life has changed tremendously. His hips don't hurt. He's got tons of energy. He's bouncy. I got home last night. He chased me around the house. It was hilarious because as he's old, he doesn't see very well. So sometimes he's chasing and he doesn't see what he runs into. But it is hilarious to watch. And it's all because of Rough Greens. Vitamins, minerals, probiotics, omega-369, sprinkle on top of your dog's food. Bam, your dog's food comes to life. Try it before you buy it. ruffgreens.com/Chad. Ruffgreens.com/Chad. You go there, they're going to send you a bag for free. You just cover the cost of shipping. It's that simple. You can also call 833-MY-DOG-77. Rough Greens makes any pet food better. Chad Benson Show.
I can't take it anymore!
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
But you still have a card to play in sort of energy and gas. Will there be moves there to sanction that key industry in Russia as well?
We're very open. We also factor in is how we can maximize the impact and the squeeze on President Putin and the financial sector. We're already seeing that. The ruble, their currency is plummeting. We're seeing the stock market plummet there. Inflation is skyrocketing. But we want to minimize the impact on the global marketplace.
Yeah, well, that's why we drill. That's why we become energy independent. That's why we do those things. If you're really serious about minimizing the global impact, well, then we have the necessary way to do that, right? I mean, there's no reason to suffer. And knowing full well this was something that many people weren't paying attention to, that this was a possibility of happening, especially as the intelligence agency kept saying for the last several months and weeks, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Don't you think that maybe you should have tried to ramp some stuff up? Now, you can't do it all yourself. The independent companies out there, the independent drillers, and they needed it to be in a way where it makes sense. But it goes back to why were we more aware of what was going on? I mean, I understand when 2 years ago, we were just talking about it earlier, 2 years ago, in April, it was $25 a barrel. Nobody makes any money on that. You're not going to find anybody in the oil and gas world that's going to, hey, that sounds great. I'll just keep losing $500,000 a week or $1 million a day or whatever it is, depending how big your operation is. You're not going to find anybody that does that. So that's understandable. You're like, because nobody was using it. A year ago, it got up to $65. But here's the other thing. By then, people had gone on to other things. By then, they were like, you know what? I don't trust what's going to happen. The coronavirus, all of those things, you just don't know. And then you've got the other side of it where banks and stuff aren't loaning to certain groups of people and pretend you're frackers and stuff. And you need that certain, credit and cash available for these things. So we should have been more. But now is the time, if we're going to turn on the spigot, to make it worthwhile to people to turn that spigot on. If you really are serious about trying to minimize the global impact. But are they really? I wonder. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. The headline reads, one killed a tiger, the other did the cha-cha. Redefining masculinity. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Getting ugly out there. Tell you that right now. Prices going through the roof. It's interesting. Are we going to be back on the road? Are we going to travel like we did before? I find this, we do. Like summertime, right? Spring's right around the corner. What's the weather like there, Producer Phil? I'm just curious right now.
It's in the high 50s.
It's not bad. We're going to be almost 90 today. 90. It feels a little different. And we're all back to normal for all intents and purposes. I think COVID for most is in the rearview mirror, and they realize that it's not going anywhere. So we learn to live with it, and we're going to plan accordingly. Travel is one of those things that we're looking at. And, we head into summer. What do we do in the summer, man? Memorial Day, right? It's like the official kickoff of summer. We're out there. We're having fun. We're barbecuing. We're going to grandma's house. We're taking a weekend trip, getting ready for the 4th of July, driving around, doing stuff. But this is all pre-$5 gas. And then we're going to be flying as well. Again, pre-insane gas prices.
Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened.
Travel search site Skyscanner reports that summer travel bookings have soared over the past month, with the top 3 destinations being Orlando, New York, and London topping the list. Industry watchers say the easing of COVID requirements for entry into and exit from many countries is one factor. Another is cost. The same travel site finds that the average summer airfare for 2022 is 53% lower than in 2019.
Yeah, because people are going, oh, let's travel. Some places are still expensive. I read an article last week, and I was like flabbergasted. So for me to take my family or somebody say, family A here, mom, dad, couple kids. Oh, why's you got to be like that? Shut up. Go to Disneyland in Anaheim or go to Disneyland in Paris. And so to do all those things, right? Disneyland Anaheim, Disneyland Paris, right? Stay, the Disney resort, in the area in and around there. All of these things. To do that, you would come out almost $1,400 to the good to fly to Paris. as you would be to fly to Anaheim, Orange County, and stay around. It's nuts. It's not so weird. But we're going to be traveling. Gas prices are going to be through the roof. And I want to see how that affects us. I do. And I still think one of the reasons things are low is because people just don't want to get on an airplane with a mask for hours. Just don't. Jet2 in England, the third largest carrier, they announced today they're kicking the mask thing away. We're done. We're moving on. Now, obviously, you got to follow the rules from wherever you are in whatever country and whatever the municipality or wants you to do, and then inside of the airport and whatnot. But then when you're on the plane, no. And I totally understand that, man. I get that. It's one of the reasons I'd rather drive somewhere. I just don't feel the need for me to think to myself, there's no way I'm keeping Charlie in a mask. There's no way. It's just, as a child, right? Like you're like, oh, keep her in a mask. Yeah, how about let's keep her pants on first, and we'll go from there. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. Tweet at us. Zelensky spoke today. He was just out a little while ago speaking. And that guy's got cojones. He does. He does. I mean, it's like he's got to get a wheelbarrow. Here's a guy, again, he was thrust into this situation. He became president of a fledgling democracy that lived for many years behind the Iron Curtain, and it is one of the most corrupt nations on the planet. He's a comedian, right? He's a smart guy, a very smart guy. He's 44 years old. His wife didn't want him to do it. He did a show about a comedian essentially becoming the president of the Ukraine. Think about that for a second. It was called For the People or We the People, roughly translated. And his first geopolitical thing is dealing with Trump and the madness around getting Hunter Biden and, the Biden criminal family. Like, all right, we're moving on from that. And then it's understanding that, Crimea was taken. And he knew what he was kind of getting into. There was Russian separatists, and he knew that. And then, lo and behold, in moves the Russians, and finally, in moves the Russians. And when other leaders, as we have seen, right, like the Afghan leader, he took off in a heartbeat, piled his plane full of money and bounced. Our leaders are like, we should get you out of there. He's standing up and saying, you know what? I don't need a ride. I need bombs. I need bullets. I need whatever you can give me. I don't need a ride. And you're like, that guy's dude. That's a man. That's what a man should be right there. That's a guy who's standing up and saying, these are my people. I'm not going anywhere. And several articles over the last couple of days have come out. He's redefining masculinity because while Putin fires and kills tigers, he danced the cha-cha because he won Dancing with the Stars, the Ukraine edition. And I thought to myself, and the way they paint the picture is he's a new, elegant, softer kind of man. No, he's not. He's a guy who was thrust into a position where he didn't want to be here. He doesn't want to know that the end game of this is probably his death. But he's not going to abandon his people. He's a leader. He's as masculine as he can get. Stop trying to soften him up. And stop trying to redefine masculinity. And then they paint Putin as this, as this guy that's this. First of all, also look at generations, right? There's almost a 30-year difference between Putin and him. And the Putin grew up in a place that's awful. Russia isn't awful now, although because of the sanctions, it's headed back into a direction that they never thought they would ever feel. But at the same time, he grew up in a Cold War atmosphere where laughter wasn't something to be cherished. Softness was nothing because every day, man or woman, it was hard. It was like everything was hard. Life was hard. Waking up was hard. Going to whatever job they told you to go to was hard. That job itself was hard. Getting food, hard. But we're going to redefine masculinity as it's this new guy here, right? He's softer, he's gentler. It's like, no, he's not. He's not Harry Styles. He's more Bear Grylls. Because he has to be. Because that's really who he is. But it's that whole redefining thing. And Hollywood loves to do that. In case in point, Monday or so, WTF is the podcast Mark Maron does, comic. He's an interesting cat, Mark Maron. He had on Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott's kind of, this guy's always worked. He's always done something. And he is, he's a cowboy, right? Like, let's call it what he is in many ways. He just feels like he was born in the wrong time. He's 77 years old. He's been married to his wife, actress Catherine Ross, since 1984. And it's hilarious because they asked him about the movie that's gotten all of the accolades, I would say. I think it's got 13 Oscar nominations. And that's The Power of the Dog. And if you don't know what it is, essentially, when The Power of the Dog came out, I just remember reading the redefining masculinity, toxic masculinity, right? So January 26th, Fast Company, Power of the Dog and Toxic Masculinity at Work. December 3rd, The Power of the Dog is a rare empathetic study of toxic masculinity with homosexual undertones. So they asked Sam Elliott about the movie.
Did you see Power of the Dog? Did you watch that movie?
Yeah, you want to talk about that piece of shit?
Oh, no. You didn't like that one?
No.
Okay, why?
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I didn't like it anyway.
Yeah.
And what really brought it home to me the other day, there was a full-page ad out in the L.A. Times, and it talked about the evisceration of the American myth. What the
What does that mean?
This is the guy that's done Westerns forever.
For his whole life.
The evisceration of the American West.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the evisceration of the American West. And the myth, again, remember we were just talking about Russia? It was hard. You know what the West was when they opened it up? It was hard. It was awful. It was horrible. It was violent, and that's not just the cowboys and the drunks. Is everything could kill you. There wasn't a lot out there. It's weird to think that, in one country, if you will, even though not everything was a state as they were opening up the West, that New York was so much more advanced and further away, and the West was this place that was completely untamed. But this movie is about, apparently, stuff.
What are all those dancers, those guys in New York that wear bow ties and not much else?
Uh-huh.
Remember them from back in the day?
Oh, the Chippendales?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what all these cowboys in that movie looked like.
Uh-huh.
They're all running around in chaps and no shirts. There's all these allusions of homosexuality throughout the movie.
Yeah. I think that's what the movie's about.
Well, what the does this woman from...
Who, Jane Campion?
Yeah, she's a brilliant director. But what the does this woman from down there
New Zealand. Right.
know about the American West?
Yeah. Oh, my God. He's just, again, redefining, this thing, toxic masculinity. That's what it's about. NPR. In the film, which Jane Campion directs, Phil is a bully who harasses his brother's wife, played by Kirsten Dunst, and mocks her son for being effeminate. And it's like this weird kind of, he hates himself because he's homosexual. It's just, again, it's if you go to see and I live for Westerns, you guys know this. It was I've seen some, I like Westerns, right? If you want to see a great Western, Old Henry, an amazing Western. But Sam didn't finish, man. Sam went hard.
Yeah.
Where are we in this world today? I mean, Cumberbatch never got out of his chap. He had two pair of chaps, a woolly pair and a leather pair.
Yeah.
And every time he'd walk in from somewhere, I don't know where, he never was on a horse.
Yeah.
Maybe once.
Yeah.
He'd walk into the house, storm up the stairs, go lay on his bed in his chaps and play his banjo. And it's like, what the Where's the Western? Where's the Western in this Western?
It's not. It's a piece about toxic masculinity.
And why in the does she shoot this movie in New Zealand and call it Montana? You say, this is the way it was. That rubbed me the wrong way, pal.
Yeah.
And the myth. I just come from Texas where I was hanging out with families, big, long, extended, multiple generation families that made their living and their lives were all about being cowboys. And boy, when I saw that, I thought, what the
Yeah. Of course, he's getting hammered for it, as you tend to do in a situation like this, because you spoke out against something and something that's woke and that they love and that's good. And then other people are championing him. He's homophobic. He's not. He's being honest about cowboy stuff. Feels he knows cowboy stuff. Feels he understands cowboy stuff. And I think he's got something to it. That being said, this was never supposed to be a cowboy movie. It was pitched in some ways as a Western, and I think that was, again, it goes back to, the way you pitch things. But he's just being honest. If you're going to see a Western, this isn't a Western. If you're going to see a movie and a study of toxic masculinity and gay undertones, this is the movie for you. Oh, okay. But like he said, there was no Western. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Tweet at us, text the program. Love hearing from you. And it's funny, too. I'm going to say this. The toxic, you can be gay and be masculine and be toxic. And you can be straight and masculine and not toxic. It should be more of a study of who are you? 323-538-2423. Car Shield, 24/7 roadside assistance, a rental car for freeway cars to shop. You choose the shop. They let you choose the shop. They get them paid directly. The shop fixes your car. And it's that simple. Plans to fit anybody's budget. It's car prices going through the roof. Used cars prices going through the roof. Why not protect yourself, protect your wallet, do the smart thing, jump on Car Shield? Because so many of us are keeping our cars longer. We've got no warranties. Maybe you bought your car used and you had very little warranty on it. And you're like, man, I wouldn't even know what to do at this point in time. If the check engine light comes on, it comes as something expensive. Well, that's why you get Car Shield. Over 1 million drivers have trusted Car Shield for a reason. They work. It's simple and easy. And like I said, they got plans to fit anybody's budget. How do you do it? You go to carshield.com/Benson. You're going to save 10% right there. Simple and easy. Carshield.com/Benson. Carshield.com/Benson. A deductible may apply. Chad Benson Show.
You stink like fear and white male privilege to me.
I do often out myself verbally as a gender. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm proud to be a gender.
Are you stupid? What? Are you kidding me? Not a great way to use your white privilege.
Some people get it, some people don't.
You're listening to the Chad Benson Show.
Never thought this was going to happen. We thought mutually assured destruction would keep the Russian bear from doing something like this, but maybe not. And I think we've got to really be prepared. You heard Lazaroff say the foreign minister say something like, "We're going to finish this to the end. If it goes nuclear, it's going to be really ugly." I mean, we just don't threaten like that. We hadn't threatened like that in the last 40 years, but unfortunately, that's where we are.
Yeah, Mike Lyons earlier today. If you didn't hear him, check out the podcast. Sobering. First time I have felt, I get, I don't know, 50, 100 text messages a day, not counting the show stuff. And that we're on a much more forward path of King Kong and Godzilla fighting, if you will. French President Emmanuel Macron spoke to Putin 90 minutes, and he said, this is a quote from him, "The worst is yet to come." The worst is yet to come. something that was said earlier by Mike is the fact that Putin now is at a point where there's atrocities going on. There's war crimes. There is no off-ramp anymore. He has burned the boats, if you will. He's on the beach. The boats are burned, and he's going to go forward. And that's something to think about. It is. Scary but true. And the worst is, I think, yet to come. We've talked about that, and it feels real. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Tweet and text the program. You guys have a blessed, wonderful day. We will do it again tomorrow. Oh, thank goodness. I see you Friday. Night-night, Jack.
This is the Chad Benson Show.